When he makes his decision, he will talk to me and make the decision. But no, everybody's replaceable. Remember that. Ron seems fit if he decides to move on. There's nothing wrong with that. You never want anybody to be in a position that don't want to be in a position. That is really unfair.
We'll talk a little bit more about education in a second. Gery Chico, the mayor, kind of gave you a nice non-endorsement endorsement this week. You were the chief of staff for him. Yep. Is all that positive stuff from the mayor enough to overcome somebody like Rahm Emanuel?
Oh, I think it was very helpful. Our campaign has been very robust. We have hundreds of volunteers in the street over the last several weeks gathering petition signatures to put us on the ballot. Our money raising has been going in a very healthy way. In fact, we had to hire some additional people, which is a good thing. And, you know, Bob, we think my record as a public servant over 20 years in the mayor's office, at the Chicago Public Schools, building schools, Chicago Park District building soccer fields, and now undertaking the restructuring of the Chicago City Colleges is what's resonating with people. When I talk to them, that's what they want to talk about, not celebrity.
And by the way, talking about the Park District and your experience with coaches at that level, there's concern there too. We mentioned parents concerned now, wondering if their kids should be in a program with football and with all the news of concussions. What about at the city parks? Do people know what's going on with this now?
I think it's the parks and the schools, the high school programs, and to the extent sports are in elementary schools, it's there as well. The word has come down about training, technique, this awareness that we were talking about. It's not about that tough guy, tough girl image, get back in there if you're seeing stars. It's about taking a moment, take a time out. What we're seeing with Jay Cutler right now. Don't go right back in there to test your manhood.
Well, he wants to, though, if it were up to him, right?
Thank
but
God
the
league is
culture is
thinking
being
better.
changed,
That's
as you say, within the team and outside of the team. The culture is changing. It is protect your brain for your lifetime. And I think that's the biggest change that we're seeing now, is that there's more self-reporting, there's reporting of players for one another. And that's really important, because we are changing the culture, and that's how we'll prevent that second injury from going back too early to play that results in these long-term, down-the-road injuries and real disabilities that we're hearing more about now.
And Rick, as you've pointed out in some of your columns, we're not just talking about football here. We're talking about other sports too. And didn't you write at one point about how at the high school and college level this may even be more serious than at the professional level?
Well, at high school level, there's been some research. A professor down at the U of I had sensors in helmets, and the forces were actually greater at the high school level, and they're not as sure why. I mean, it's like the blows. They think it's because of the disparity in size of the players. Perhaps they aren't prepared, their necks aren't as large. You know, the absorption of the shock is a huge aspect of whether you're going to get a concussion or not. But they're not sure why. There's so many things we don't know. You know, with the Bears, Jay Cutler's sitting out this game. Now, if he comes back, somebody has to authorize him to come back, and there's a responsibility, there's a liability there. We saw what happened with Hunter Hillenmeyer, the linebacker for the Bears. He had a head trauma of some form of concussion in the preseason. He's sitting out the entire season. He hasn't really spoken except for one time after he came back and spoke to the press, but I wonder what's going on there. What kind of message will Hunter be giving to his teammates? Is he going to come back and play? And does that give a message to kids, to high school kids, Pee-wee kids, and their parents? You know, just be careful with this, as the doctor says, and she is a brain surgeon, so pretty smart. You know, this is your brain for life. You can live without a knee. I mean, you can get it replaced, your ankle, your shoulder, your wrist, fingers. One brain. You've got to be careful with it.
Yeah, this is something we really care about as neurosurgeons. You know, it is our #1 public health issue, not just football-related head injury, but all head injury. And there are very exciting things going on in research, both in terms of how we take care of the patients who've been injured, but even more importantly, how we prevent injury. And going into the future, there are genetics related to this that we're just barely scratching the surface on. in which we may be able to understand in the future. Imagine the day when there's a blood test that tells you whether your child should be undertaking a career in contact sports or not based on a genetic predisposition to be more or less injured by a blow to the head. That's something that may be in our future. So the only good news coming out of all of these concussions is that the focus that is coming onto it now is in really invigorating research and making all of us more aware of it, so that hopefully we can answer questions, and this concussion will not be the black box that it was in the past.
And in the case of Jay Cutler, if it happens to him again, could his career end?
Well, if you're asking me, absolutely. Depends how careful you want to be, too. And, you know, another aspect of this, Bob, this has to do with education. Imagine all these boys playing football, millions of boys. We love this game. Girls, if they want to play, too, but they have to go to school. Now, do you want kids who have a headache, who maybe don't feel right? This all has to do with the student that you're getting in our schools. And education, as we know, is everything.
Absolutely. And it's also beyond football, excuse me. It's a soccer as well. It's probably the fastest growing sport that we saw in the Chicago Park District. And there, you use your head all the time. Sometimes not the way you intended. So I think it crosses the lines of sports.
Girls basketball, a lot of concussions.
And we talked about biking, which is really the broad swath of the population, and that is the #1 sports-related head injury comes from biking.
How many get it though without a helmet?
Yeah, we're wearing helmets now.
Very
at
few.
least.
So that's the take-home message if we have one today, and that is wear a helmet. 85% of those bike-related head injuries can be prevented by simply wearing a helmet.
All right, Phyllis Lockett, I want to come back to you after a quick break here.
Right,
Fox Chicago News, the Friday night edition rolls on right after this.